books at home, and she's in elementary school, and she's a gifted child. And my concerns as a parent is that, and as a teacher, is that parents really do need to get involved in their child's education. You need to sit with them every night, ask them what they learned, sit and do the homework, and in the process, you're going to learn with them. My disappointment as a science teacher is that parents and children don't understand science. They don't think that it's important, but it's in every aspect of your lives. And if you don't know science, your children are learning it at home. Have your child teach you about science. So as a parent, you really need to stay on top of your child. Take the iPad away from them. Take the iPhone away from them. Have them read real books. At night, I sit with my daughter. She comes in bed with me. She reads her book. I read my book. So that's my comment as a parent. As a teacher, tried public school, tried private school, and the thing that I saw, and I was high school level, is that, the kids take liberties, and I think it's because they don't have the discipline at home. It's hard being a teacher. It's hard when you have the kids that are constantly texting. So I kind of put that responsibility on the parent that you need to discipline your child, make them understand that education is very important, and that it's going to shape their entire future. To the school and the commissioner, you need, if you want greater FCAT scores, you need to get this instilled young. Start science in kindergarten. Don't start teaching them science in 5th grade when they take the FCAT. You've got to start them early. Give your science teachers the laboratory classrooms and the materials and the resources that they need. Bring in the community, the businesses, FAU. I went to the elementary school science fair, and I was horrified at what actually made it to the science fair.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Okay.
Much
so
better.
If we're going to up the bar, we have to do it everywhere. We have to do it at home. We have to do it at the school. But teachers can only be as good as what we're given. Science fair. You need to get people who know science. My daughter did a science fair experiment on adulterated food coloring using gel electrophoresis. She didn't even make it through the school science fair. And I think had there been a judge, maybe from FAU or someone that could have seen the creativity in it, she might have made it to the science fair. How many times do we have to see the potato battery? FCAT, it's not, FCAT, you can do well. It's critical thinking. We're not teaching our kids critical thinking. We're teaching them rote memorization. They need to learn how to think through a problem. And the way the schools can do that, you bring real life into the classroom. You bring in guest speakers. You bring in professors, whether they're chemists or scientists or microbiologists. So we need to bring in, businesses like Scripps, bring them in. Sometimes they tell me there's no budget to bring in guest speakers. We have the Kennedy Space Center. This all takes money, and maybe we can get them from the community and the schools. Now, as a parent of a gifted child, my daughter, I don't even know what the FCAT scores was, but she got her FCAT right, and she got a 5 on them. When I heard they were lowering the FCAT scores, what message is that giving to our high-performing students? It's saying, your hard work doesn't matter because we're going to lower the standard. So, it's sending a bad message. And FCAT, you can do it whether you know the facts or not. It's critical thinking. There's a strategy to taking standardized tests. And if the kids are taught how to think through, they could probably do pretty well. Gifted programs fall under ESE. And I think the gifted students are being underrepresented because we're spending so much money and so much time to bring our low achievers up that our high achievers are getting lost. And the last thing I want to say is I just finished my gifted endorsement certification, and I am switching. I would like to teach middle school gifted classes in the sciences. And honestly, when I look at the jobs available on the website, it's disappointing. There really isn't anything, there. So that's my comment, sorry.
Okay, I'm going to respond before the commissioner. I'm going to ask all of you a question, because you raised some points that I've been talking about in the state a lot. Those of you who are parents here who've had kids go through the system, how many of your kids did science fair in elementary school? Okay. How many of your kids went through science fair in middle school? And now how many in high school? Okay. So my suggestion, because my daughter did science fair, and she was one of the few students in the entire United States that went to international science fair all 4 years of high school. It is quite unusual, but it can be done. She loved science fair. She found that to be a motivator. What she got out of science fair was all the things you talked about. Critical thinking, number one. Ability to speak on her feet. To answer questions from all types of judges. When it was local, whether they were from FAU or high school science teachers or whatever. When she went on to state and then international science fair, she was judged by Nobel laureates. Now, think about that. How many of us could stand there going back to high school and be able to have that kind of experience? So she can think critically on her feet and respond to very intelligent people. It doesn't mean that your kids can't do that either, but I found that science fair was one of the best ways for kids to not only be motivated about science, but interested in a lot of different areas. So if you want to take that back to your schools and make those suggestions, that those schools, when they get into middle and high school, that you encourage and find a high school teacher that's interested in backing science fair, because in reality, that's really all it takes, is an interested science teacher. And if a science teacher knows that they've got students, they will do it. When my daughter started Spanish River, she went to her science teacher who had stopped doing science fair because she found the kids weren't interested. My daughter said, I want to do science fair. I will help you recreate that chapter. And that's how science fair got going again at Spanish River High School. So that's the one piece. Gifted, we also agree that there needs to be more done for our top performing students, let's call them that. I mean, I think we're number one in AP testing in the nation. We are number one in testing, so that has to tell you that we are doing something for our best and brightest. Some very good things. But yes, I do feel there needs to be more going on for the gifted. So you had some very good comments there. I think the commissioner, a lot of this really, you have a lot of questions, but specifically if you've got questions pertaining to why the scores were changed, what kinds of things we're heading to in the future.
So the point about your daughters, were you fine with me?
No.
Hold
Please
it.
use the microphone.
Oh, okay, use the microphone.
Thank you.
Your daughter's 5 didn't change. What changed, because we didn't lower the standard. Her 5 remains the same. What we did was we changed the point from 4.0 to 3.0 in terms of where the state wanted to have the cutoff. Her 5 didn't change. It moved from 3 to 4 for 2 reasons. We had 2 scores with more rigor. We didn't have 2 scores in 11 and 10. And the part about communication. But also put this in the context of the number of votes that the board has taken in the last several months to help us with what we call a year transition. The board also voted to hold harmless students in the lowest 25%. We also voted that if a school wouldn't be this school, if a school has at 25 or fewer percentage of its students who are reading at a proficient level, that school's grade would have dropped to an automatic F. There were at least 21 of those in the state. I said no, at least 1 grade level. The board also voted to have no more than 1 drop in grades across the board because we had a lot of changes, all good changes. We also understand in the transition period, the vote for the 4 to 3 is part of that continuation. Her 5 remains the same. I saw hands, lady behind you, and then I'll go here, and then I'll move to my right.
My question is that I hear you about the science, and I am very involved. I'm a PTA president of our school, and we are from a Montessori school, and we teach science is part of life in our school. I mean, life is what we teach. But my problem is that in 4th grade, science, because it's not on the MCAT. That's a problem. And my son does not like science. He's in 4th grade, and the reason being, it's not taught. And when I asked the teacher why his progress report showed a problem in the science area, because it happens to be my favorite subject, so I went to her and she said, we don't have time to teach science. He'll get it next year because he's in 5th grade, because it's part of the MCAT. That's not well-rounded.
That's right.
I mean, you're not helping them move along by not teaching them science in 4th grade because they don't have time because they're being taught other things for the MCAT.
For show of hands, how many of you would approve of us having MCAT? Some of you may approve of MCAT, period. Well, for the sake of argument, how many of you would approve having...
I agree, we need the testing. I mean, you have to hold our schools and our students to a standard. I mean, you can't, you know, do away with it, but I think it needs to be overhauled. And we need to look at it all the way across the board. I mean, why are we not doing semester testing and cumulative testing?
Yeah, that's right.
You know, when they're meeting their benchmarks, but then you have a tester who's not a good tester, and it happens to be their lead back year. You know, I mean, that's tough. That's tough, but they're meeting their benchmarks, and they're above grade level. But they just really take poor tests. And, you know, some of those things, you can't change that in a person. No matter how hard you teach them how to take a test, sometimes it's just not in them. It's tough.
Good point. All right. Massachusetts, it's back. Massachusetts, at least a year ago, was the only state for STEM, for engineering, to actually teach engineering in elementary school. The goal was to teach the concepts of thinking like an engineer, not the application. So